The big news, Bryan Kohberger has been indicted by a grand jury. Grand jury would have found sufficient probable cause to go to a trial. So they're going to skip the preliminary hearing. There will be no preliminary hearing, and an arraignment will happen on Monday. Let's get into some more Idaho 4 updates. Hi everyone, Empowering True Crime, Alex here. And this case, oh my gosh, there was so much ado about this preliminary hearing and whether or not the surviving roommate, Bethany Funk, would testify at the preliminary hearing. And of course, Dylan Mortensen, the other surviving roommate. And so much has happened over the last month that it really definitely surprised me that the grand jury was called. Ashley Banfield, who's from News Nation, referred to it as a secret grand jury, and I know that that's not like technically a thing, but I got what she meant by that, which is that it's not like in the case of, like, for example, the Trump grand jury, that was highly publicized, even though they weren't exactly stating what dates they were going, and that was a little bit confusing and elusive, but we all knew that was happening, that was publicized. In this case, it was definitely a secret and a surprise. They didn't, I don't know if the defense knew it. I bet you they didn't, based on the different motions that were being written up and all that stuff. But the grand jury was called. And one other thing, I was going to talk about all of the motions back and forth about the gag order. This is the non-dissemination order that's in place to not share any information by attorneys and law enforcement. And there's been some back and forth between the different parties, and I'm not going to cover it. I'm going to go ahead and place a link to the lawyer that's Peter Tragos. He has covered all the motions in depth, and he's an attorney, so I think he's better suited to discuss that than I will be. So I'm going to put a link into the comments for that. Even though I am a communications media person by trade, that gag order really interests me. But because there's like all of these documents, and there's a lot of legal jargon, I think he's better suited to share all of that. And I'll post a link, like I said. Let's go over some documents. Oh, before that, if you enjoy my style of true crime, which is more empathetic, more empowering, more about educating and advocating for the victims, then I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Okay, so this is the actual indictment. And it says here that Bryan Kohberger is accused by the grand jury of Latah County. A little bigger. Bryan Kohberger is accused by the grand jury of Latah County by this indictment of the crimes of burglary, murder in the first degree, murder in the first degree, murder in the first degree, murder in the first degree. So those are the 5 counts as follows. Count 1, burglary. That the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. Count 2, murder in the first degree. That the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died. The third count, murder in the first degree, that Bryan C. Kohberger did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez. And count 4, that Bryan C. Kohberger did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, kill and murder Xana Knodel. And the count number 5, murder in the first degree, that Bryan C. Kohberger did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, with malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin. So that is the indictment, and it is a all of which is contrary to the form, force, and effect of the statuses in such case made and provided against the peace and dignity of the state of Idaho. That was dated on the 16th of May, which was Tuesday. And the presiding juror has the signature has been redacted. So, but this is the actual indictment. And there was a new arraignment, a new hearing scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. And it says it's going to be in person as opposed to the other two. I'm going to share those in a second that are online. This one appears that it's going to be in person. So that is in person. And one other thing, I may have mentioned this before, but I always, it like trips me up every time I see Julie Fry. She's the clerk of court. She is the wife of the chief, James Fry of Moscow Police Department. So that is always really interesting that, whenever I see that. Okay, anyhow, next document. So this one was really interesting. This is the motion from the prosecution to seal the names of the witnesses. So it says here, comes now, State of Idaho, by and through Latah County Prosecuting Attorney, and respectively moves this court pursuant to Idaho criminal rules 6.2, 6.3, and 6.5 for an order sealing the names of all the witnesses examined before the grand jury herein. So some witnesses spoke at the grand jury. In support, the state respectfully represents to the court that it has received numerous complaints from potential or prospective witnesses or their families and associates regarding being harassed both in person and via social media. The reports of harassment have included threats as well as what appears to be intimidation. Given this and the broad publicity surrounding these proceedings, the state respectfully submits that releasing the names of the witnesses who appeared before the grand jury would invite additional harassment, intimidation, and possible threats, and undermine not only the integrity of this case, but the parties' prospective rights to a fair trial with an impartial jury. So that was the motion to seal the grand jury witnesses. And then the motion was granted. So it says here, the above matter having come before the court pursuant to the state's motion, the court having reviewed the same, being fully advised in the premises and good cause of hearing, it is hereby ordered that the names of all witnesses examined before the grand jury herein be sealed. So that was, now this is really funny, that was signed off by District Judge. So his last name is Judge. District Judge John Judge. So that was interesting, and that happened yesterday on the 17th. So we will not see the names of the witnesses that appear before the grand jury. Now, because this is going now to trial, it could take a couple of years before we see it. And because there is this gag order in place, we may not know a lot of information for a really long time. So we won't know unless the person speaks up, right? Like, for example, right now, there is no gag order on the Gonzalez family. They can speak. I just don't think they were a witness, because then they would have been probably asked not to speak. But anyway, so they are not, the gag order is in place. Although on Monday, I'm going to show you now, there is going to be some information. They are going to be talking about the gag order. So let's continue. There was also another document that was filed, is this order governing courthouse and courtroom conduct and media activities. So we've already kind of seen this the last time, there's courtroom seating. It talks about seatings for the victims' families, defendants' family, the pooled media seating. Then there's a general public and additional media seating in front of the bar, entry and exit during court proceedings. That there's going to be security. They're not allowed to have the phones. Says must be turned off and shall not be used for recording or the transmission of sounds or images. So they can't use their cell phones in the courtroom. And other electronic devices shall not be used to record or transmit sounds or images in or from the courtroom. No disruptive behavior. There's different rules on camera, video coverage, courtroom media requirements. It says here, photography, video, and audio is not permitted during a recess in the court proceedings. Recess means anytime the judge is not at the bench. No live broadcasting, transmitting, or streaming from the courtroom is allowed. So no video or still photography shall be taken of any papers, documented notes, which may be located on or around counsel tables or used by counsel. So basically no information, because what's the point of a gag order if then somebody can go into the courtroom and, zero in on a document that's on the defendant's table, right? So yeah, it sort of makes sense that this is the case. All right. So violations of this order may be subject the violator to a charge of contempt. The clerk of court shall post this order at conspicuous locations within the courthouse and provide copies to all interested parties. So that was also signed by John C. Judge, Administrative District Judge. Now, I just wanted to reiterate that there was, okay, so let's go through these times again. There's going to be at 9 a.m. on Monday, May 22nd, there's going to be the arraignment of Brian Kohberger because of the grand jury's indictment. Okay? That should happen in person. Then there was already a scheduling conference on May 22nd at 10 a.m. That was supposed to be a Zoom meeting. So it was going to be an online. It's still up in the air whether that's going to happen, continue to happen, because one is an in-person. I bet you this will also be an in-person as well. But I'm not entirely certain because, well, for example, in the case of this one, the scheduling conference was supposed to have the Gonzalez family attend. They are planning to be at the arraignment. So then since they're already there, they'll probably just be there in person, right? So I think that the video conference would be to accommodate everybody, but since people are already planning to be there at 9 a.m., then they're going to be there. So it sounds like they'll probably just stay there and have the in-person. So I don't know yet. We'll find out. As soon as I know whether that's going to be an online, I will let you know. And, but this was the scheduling conference that was going to be made between the court, between the Gonzalez family, and with the media group that is asking to end the gag order. And then the last hearing is going to be at 11 a.m. and that's the motion to compel discovery. And that said, it was also going to be online, but I bet you they're just going to have that be in person. Once again, I don't know, like, for example, it says here it's a motion of remote hearing. So I don't know if it's just going to be an in-person now that the arraignment is already happening at 9 a.m. But I will find out and I will let you know as soon as we do, because I was planning to attend. So let us see what happens. And I just checked this, but let me just double check to see if there are any other documents that have been. Okay, so we've already seen these. The indictment, the notice of the hearing, the order governing courtroom conduct, the motion to seal the grand jury witnesses, and the order to seal the grand. So we've seen all the latest documents that have been published so far. And then just a reminder that that preliminary hearing that was scheduled for June 26th is no longer happening. So that's been scrapped because the grand jury indicted Kohberger. So that means that they found sufficient probable cause. The preliminary hearing, what the preliminary hearing would have done. So just to recap, a grand jury is put on by the prosecution. The prosecution presents the probable cause, and then a grand jury sees whether or not they believe that there is sufficient probable cause to go to trial. Doesn't mean that they believe that the person is guilty. So there are lots of cases where a grand jury indicts a defendant and the person is found not guilty. So that doesn't mean it's not a direct correlation. It just means that if there is sufficient probable cause. The preliminary hearing, which was going to happen on June 26th, in that case, the prosecution was going to present their evidence and the defense was going to present their evidence. The reason that this whole conversation was important is that they believed, based on court documents, that the surviving roommate Bethany Funk had exculpatory information, evidence that could exonerate Brian Kohberger. So that was really fascinating, that whole conversation. And instead of her going to the preliminary hearing, they had negotiated that she was going to be interviewed by the defense. I hope that still happens, because I think it is very important that if there is exculpatory information, that the defense has it, right? And the thing is that if there really was if she really had exculpatory information that could say, hey, Brian Kohberger is innocent here, is not guilty, then I believe that the state would have already, that the police would have already known this, and they could use that information, right? Like, for example, if she knew who did it, then the police should know that, right? It shouldn't have to come out later on. It shouldn't have to come out in 2 years that Bethany Funk knows who killed it. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying what exculpatory information, like, it would have to be so extreme the exculpatory information that any one individual has that would outweigh all of the other probable cause that the prosecution has found and has on the table, right? So just would love to hear what you think, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And again, the grand jury surprised me. I knew that it was definitely like there were gurglings of it happening, but it definitely surprised me. That's why when Ashley said that it was a secret grand jury, I mean, I definitely saw it as that, because it was a surprise. It wasn't publicly talked about or mentioned or anything. So would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something new, I'd appreciate if you hit the thumbs up. And I'm a growing channel. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, you like my style of covering true crime, education, empathy, advocacy, then I'd appreciate if you join the empowering community, empowering warriors, and let us fight for the victims, fight for justice and advocacy so that we can have a better world. I would love to have you join, and definitely, if you haven't yet, also hit the bell so that you get all the notifications anytime I post, go live, or post a short. All right, everyone, enjoy. Remember to keep it empowering, and let's do it so we can get justice for the victims. All right, everyone, have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for notifications. Thank you.